When you learn how to treat people well, and when you learn how to see people and meet them where they are, doesn't mean that you're like customer is always right kind of thing, or bending over backwards for horrible people or anything. But when you actually treat people with kindness and intentionality, I believe in this next season, that will be the competitive advantage that helps you stand out. Everybody will now have great AI. How is that really going to differentiate you from other creators? You actually have to love and care for people well.
There is a massive disruption in the industry, and one of the AI platforms just learned how to use software, right? Just like a human being. How things are unfolding, if you could look through a lens and say, what does the future look like for sales and marketing in regards to small businesses, and of course the customer experiences, how there's a disruption in the marketplace, like arguably one of the largest disruptions since the Gutenberg press.
I think for a lot of people, that's very scary, especially in the marketing communication world. I understand the fear that is there. And the truth is,
are you looking for actionable insights from the world's most inspiring individuals? The Built by Love podcast is on a mission to transform your life, your business, and your health. Tune in for impactful conversations with people who do business differently. Avoid burnout, acquire freedom, and live life fully on your own terms. With me, Pete Daly-Dickson, alongside Daniel Bussius.
JJ Peterson, it is an absolute honor to have you on our podcast. Welcome to the Built by Love podcast.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We like to kind of start questions with an interesting take. So can you tell us of a scary time that you were in professionally that you weren't quite sure what was going to happen, what the outcome was going to be?
Or even personally. I mean, let's keep it real.
Yeah. Emotionally or physically? Because I've had a lot of both.
Whatever comes to mind. High pressure, high stakes.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. So I was one of the times that was like, why did I do this and how did I get here? I was a youth pastor. And one of the things that I did is I took my juniors who were going into their senior year, so like kind of the leaders of the youth group, on an adventure trip to Colorado. So we went like whitewater rafting and hiking and rappelling and all of that stuff. And we had a free day one time, and I decided that it would be fun to go to an alligator farm. There was an alligator farm nearby, and I just thought that would be quirky and kooky and weird. And we get there, and it's exactly what you would expect. Like, it's a shock that it's still open. There's people with maybe 2 teeth running it. I mean, it's just kind of wild. And one of the things that they would do is they would allow you to get in the pen with the alligators. And so what they would do is they would take an alligator and they would kind of tie a rope around its arms and tie it to a dock that was kind of far away so it could only go forward, like the rope was tight. Then you would come and sit on the back of the alligator, and then you would take a picture with it. And some of these kids who were going into their senior year were 18 years old. And so they had the ability to decide on their own if they wanted to go do this. And so one of the kids got in the pen with the alligators. And I'm responsible for these children.
I was just going to say, you're responsible.
Whether they're 18 or not. And the only thing they said the entire time was, if the alligator starts moving forward, don't get off of it, because you're not, like, it can't get you if you're on its back. Well, this kid who weighed maybe 90 pounds soaking wet is on the back of this alligator, and it starts taking off, running forward, and he jumps off and runs away from it, and it's like clear from the alligator. The alligator's nowhere near him, and everybody starts screaming, "Don't jump off." So he turns right around and runs back and jumps on the alligator, which is now dragging him under a dock. I'm stuck on the other side of the fence. One of my youth sponsors is there. He dives in, he goes over, he jumps on the head of the tail of the alligator and is trying to pull him back from going under the dock. I'm sitting there going, I'm going to lose 2 people. And finally, like, one of the brothers who was in charge of the park comes over and literally just puts his hands over the alligator's eyes. And evidently the alligator thought it was asleep, and so just stopped. And both of them were able to escape. And at that moment, I was like, well, thank you, all powerful anything, that nothing happened here, and we will not be coming back to this place again.
And what goes on in Colorado stays in Colorado, right?
100%. 100%. I mean, it's bad enough that I was taking them whitewater rafting, which was dangerous, and like rock climbing and rappelling, which was dangerous. But then to put them in an alligator pen was a whole other level of
Well,
stupidity.
JJ, it's incumbent on me on behalf of Daniel to award you with the current first prize for the best story at the beginning of our podcast.
I was thinking the same
Unfortunately, I have a
thing.
million of them. I do have a million, so
Great. We got plenty of time. That's awesome, isn't it, Daniel?
Oh my God. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, this by far is like the best story that started the podcast yet. So, and to top it off, because I've been like, I'm originally from Maryland. And so you drive down to Florida when you're going to spring break, when you're in your younger years and things like that. And you pass all the alligator farms. And the fact that you're saying there's an alligator farm in Colorado immediately for me was like, this story is crazy. Like there's an alligator farm in Colorado.
They built it over hot springs, and so the alligators actually got even bigger than normal because they were able to grow, and it was insane. There's also a UFO landing site right by there, so you can check that out if you're ever near Buena Vista, Colorado.
I'm literally, after this podcast, going to be Googling. I'm like, okay, there's just 2 crazy things that I want to go see now.
If they're still open. We may have shut it down. The health department may have shut that down after we were there.
You mentioned that you're youth pastor there, JJ, which is kind of like a good segue into the podcast proper, so to speak. Most people who know you would know you as StoryBrand. I mean, you're kind of synonymous with the two. So what was the connection? What was the journey from one to the other?
Well, when I was in college, I went down to Mexico with a nonprofit that built homes in Mexico. And I actually ended up like living in Tijuana and building homes and schools. And I fell in love with this nonprofit and the work. And my junior year in college, I went to them and said, I want to come work for you. What do you need? And they said, what we need is somebody to do communications and marketing. And so at the time, my college major was elementary education. I wanted to be a teacher. And so I changed my degree my junior year to communications and public relations. And when I graduated, immediately started working for this nonprofit. And I did that for a number of years. And while I was doing that, I became a volunteer youth pastor at this tiny little church in the inner city in San Diego. And so I was doing both of those things. I was kind of volunteering with youth and then working for this nonprofit, and then ended up getting hired at a huge church in Arizona and went there. And so my roots started in communication and marketing, and then kind of got into ministry for a little while, and then ended up doing comedy. And I actually toured and did improv comedy for a number of years. So there's a whole bunch of stories there. And while I was touring, I kind of got tired of touring, and we did clean comedy. So we were at a lot of conferences, we were at a lot of corporate events, and I would see people on stage actually being horrible communicators and not doing well. And a lot of them were truthfully very arrogant and rude. And so I was done touring. I didn't want to be on the road so much. And I just decided I wanted to go back and be a part of raising up the next generation of communicators and teach them to kind of become better at their craft and then also be humble in the process. And so I went back and got my master's in what's called theology in the arts. So I studied story, and I studied movies and television and story arcs and how to communicate through story. And then I got my PhD in communication, specifically in the area of narrative theory and narrative marketing. And I was a professor for quite a long time, teaching marketing, teaching leadership, kind of doing both of the things that I wanted to do, and teaching speech, communication. And I was dean of students at a university in Southern California. And Donald Miller, this is pre-StoryBrand, he's the founder and president of StoryBrand. But I brought him in to speak to my students about using your life as a powerful story. And at that time, I had sold a reality television show to a production company and was leaving the school and Don was getting ready to start StoryBrand, and he was like, "Oh, so you did marketing, you've studied story, you teach story. Would you mind coming out and just seeing, maybe even rebranding yourself?" It was one of the first workshops we'd ever done. And I said, "Sure." And I came out to Nashville from LA and just kind of fell in love with the process. It was what I had been trying to do in many ways and teach for 20 years. And he had put it so simply. And I was kind of mad. I was like, "You jerk. I literally spent 12 years in college to try to understand this and teach this, and you figured it out, and you're not even a marketer." But it really was amazing and changed everything for me, even remembering back to when I was that 24-year-old right out of college and going, if I would have had this then, this would have changed everything. And so that was about 10 years ago that I started coming out to Nashville. And since then, we've kind of built the company up and now help thousands of people all over the world clarify their message using the power of story.
I don't know if you know this, JJ, but I'm an actor.
Really?
So you, as soon as you started talking about improv, it's like, okay, can we just kind of just put Daniel to one side and you and I can just have a conversation about that? There's so much we could talk about. But yeah, fascinating. And what is the name of the nonprofit? It feels like it should have a shout out.
Yeah, it's called Amore Ministries. And oddly enough, I am back on the board
Amazing.
30 years later. So 30 years after being there on staff, I'm on the board of directors there. So I flew out just last weekend for less than 24 hours to be in San Diego for a board meeting.
Wow. And what are they doing? Like, what is their mission? Just in case our listener says, "Hey, I want to volunteer or donate."
Yeah. Forward facing, what they really are is a short-term missions organization that takes groups to Mexico to build homes. But really what they are is they support the local church. And how it started was that they were volunteering, the founders were volunteering in an orphanage, and they found out that a lot of the kids had families. Their families didn't have shelter for them. And so what was happening is families were splitting up because people didn't have homes to live in. And so they went to the local churches and they said, "How can we help you?" And they said, "Keep our families together." And so the way that they really did that, empowering the local church and building it up, was by building homes and then ultimately building some schools. And they really transformed the Tijuana dump like 30 years ago, and medical clinics and all this stuff. And so that's still what they do. Now they take about, I think this year it'll take about 5,000 people down to Mexico to build homes, mostly Mexico, but they also do work in South Africa and even some in Australia and Europe.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously, I live in San Diego, and I've made many treks down to Tijuana, dating back from when I was 21 all the way till now for different purposes. Sometimes younger years for drinking, maybe, and then the older years for food, to go in to get lobster in Puerto Nueve and other places, because there's amazing stuff down in Tijuana. But there are parts where you drive through that are very heartbreaking, where you look at that and you realize this is not just someone that has like a dilapidated or small home. I mean, these people are making whatever they find on the side of the road, they're trying to make shelter with, and there's no power, there's no water. And it's for us in San Diego, it's 20 minutes away. I mean, it is so close, and you forget about, you see it sometimes on TV, but you kind of numb to it. Like, that's just in a far off place.
Yeah.
But it's so it's amazing work
right there. And like I said, and you're correct in that, like, it really is, for a lot of people, some of this stuff is life and death. They have a home, they live through the rainy season. If they don't, like, they might not, and some of their family might not. And as a college, recently graduated college student, I felt the weight of trying to communicate those stories back then, and trying to figure out, how do I communicate this in a way that gets people involved? I mean, it's, one of those things when you go, no, your money and your time literally saves lives. That should be a no-brainer when it comes to communicating, and yet it's not, And so that's kind of even that to this day is what drives me with StoryBrand. Now, I don't always work with nonprofits I do work with a lot of nonprofits, but I also work with a lot of for-profit companies, very large companies and small companies all over the world.
Are you ready to take your business to the next level, but continue to be held back by marketing that fails to bring in new customers? It's time to stop settling for lackluster results, wasting your time and money, and focus on a proven formula for business growth. At Built by Love, we're more than a marketing agency. We're your growth partner. As a multiple-time award-winning agency, we specialize in creating marketing strategies that aren't just effective, they're transformative. Here's what we do. 1. Grow your revenue. Our proven systems drive meaningful, measurable results. 2. Elevate your brand. Our strategies will help you stand out and connect with your audience on a deeper level. 3. We save you time and money. Our award-winning team will handle your advertising and marketing with precision and expertise so you can focus on what you do best. Don't just take our word for it. Experience the difference for yourself. Book your free consultation today at builtbylove.com.
And even with them, it may not be a life or death situation, but learning how to communicate in a way that invites customers into a story that can solve a problem for them, right? The reason why we buy products is because it solves a problem for us. And when people's problems can be solved by getting the product or service that they need to make their life easier, their life is better. And so it's not quite a life and death thing, but it still, to me, drives everything I do in helping people try to communicate more clearly so that truthfully lives can be better. And I know sometimes when you're in the for-profit space, that seems a little bit like, blowing smoke, but it genuinely is what drives me, which is why I love the title of your podcast and your agency and everything you guys do, because it really is grounded in trying to make people's lives better and driven by that love and that actual desire to help people, even whether it's, you're selling a shoe or you're working with a nonprofit.
Yeah. Well, to add to that, because I do think on the small business side, right? The large corporations is a different thing. I mean, you are arguably helping to, help those companies make payroll and so forth. But on the small business side, where you're directly impacting the owners, it is kind of a life and death situation because you're helping them to have their business grow. That's paying for their mortgage. It's paying for their retirement. It's feeding their families. And, I've been in business since 1998. So at the time of this podcast, we're approaching 27 years in business. And, we've rebranded and so forth. But one of the things, and I'll never forget when I was deciding to rebrand as Built by Love, and there was someone that had been saying, why would you call your company Built by Love? Like, I wouldn't hire you. Like, I'd hire, XYZ, accelerate your marketing or whatever. And I was like, I'm done dealing with the people. Not that there's anything wrong with them, that they just want the money, right? They don't really care about the outcome. They don't really care about, is it making the world a better place or is it improving any lives? That's not what ignites my fire. And there's a time and place, whenever that is, that, whether you're religious or not, I believe that I'm going to have to answer the Lord. And he's going to say, you had a gift of life. What did you do with it? And if I say, I just made a lot of money and bought a lot of fun things, but I didn't really make a positive impact in the world, then I kind of feel like I've wasted my gift. And so, so I would say to you, JJ, especially for your experiences, is you are fulfilling, you are saving lives, you are, and especially through all the small businesses that you work with and you impact, you're changing also not only the owners of those companies, but the customers that they're serving and the clients that they're serving. You're helping improve their lives. So it's millions.
Well, that's the hope. That's the hope anyway. So
the thing that came to me, JJ, when you're talking earlier is, I think ultimately business is about transformation. Businesses sell transformation. And even if you're buying a shoe, the transformation is that I'm walking barefoot and I want to transform, and communication is at the heart of that. And you mentioned that love, which is the Built by Love podcast, is that you could argue that ultimately love is the most powerful transformative power. So if you're in the business of transformation, which if you're in business, you almost certainly are, then to not harness love in some way, you're missing out on the most powerful transformative power that there is. What would you say to that?
Oh, that's all garbage. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, I 100% agree. And it can feel, I think a lot of times, when it comes to business, we feel like we either have to be some ways like altruistic or profit driven. And that like, it's hard, very honestly, to be both, because if you're profit driven, then really you're not putting people first or whatever. And I don't think that those two things have to conflict.
Mm.
I believe you can make money as a business. Money in and of itself is not good or evil. And there is no value of, moral value to cash. Now, what you do with it and what it can do to you, that's a whole other thing. But making money is not bad. And I believe that I really hope that we're in a new era where people are actually melding those two things together, where you really believe, and I very much believe, you can be a good person and you can make good money. And then you can even help more people with that money, and they don't have to conflict. And there's so much research too beyond that about the power of and the joy you get and the fulfillment you experience when you actually come from a place of serving others. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of research, like, there's actually, well, here, like, I know there was a study. I'm going to pull it out and people can look this up because I don't know the actual study now, but there's a study that basically says, like, if I go to, say, my favorite dinner place and I have the best burnt end tacos I've ever had, something like that. And then I go back to that same restaurant by myself and have those exact same tacos, there's actually a diminishing return on that investment of time and money when it comes to joy and satisfaction. Amen. However, if I take you back and I watch you experience those tacos, my joy actually increases to a higher level. So people go, well, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, oddly enough, the first time you experience something, a lot of times it does. Like if you go on a cruise, you can experience great happiness. If you try to go on that cruise again by yourself, you will experience a diminished return on that happiness. When you invite other people into that experience with you, your joy and fulfillment, everything goes up. And so it's the same principle, I believe, in business. Right? Like that first big client that you land as an agency or a marketer is just like blows your mind. It's like, oh my gosh, we just signed a $10,000 contract. I never thought I'd make $10,000 all stuff. Well, then the next time you get it, it's like, so that's great. We got $10,000. And then by the third time you're like, oh, we only got $10,000. But if in each time of those experiences, what you're actually doing is taking that moment and using it as an opportunity to serve the people that you're doing this with, you will, and really what you were talking about, grounding yourself in love, you will also experience a higher level of enjoyment, fulfillment, and all of that. So I think that, I think it's good business. Be a good person and you will do better business. That's just truth. But on top of that, you want a fulfilling business. I genuinely believe the best way to do that is to ground your business and the way that you work in love and serve people through that. And they will have a better experience and you will as well.
I think we found our new spokesman for Built by Love podcast, right? Daniel.
Yeah. The only problem is I don't think we can afford them compared to. Yeah. So it's amazing. I almost want to segue to talk about AI in the future. And so I kind of want to, like, if we can go there for a moment, and then I want to get back to, how you met Donald Miller and things like that, because there's some interesting things I'd like to learn about. But
so go on then. I want to see how you segue from that conversation there about love into AI. Go on.
Yeah, no. Well, okay. So
bearing in mind that you got a gentleman with a PhD in communication listening. Okay, so right, you better do a damn good job.
No pressure. How are you going to segue to that? Right? Okay. But
I believe in you.
Yeah, you got this, Daniel. Go on.
Daniel, you can do it. There is, without giving my opinion, there is a massive disruption in the industry, and I just read the one of the AI major AI platforms just learned how to use software, right? Just like a human being, that's localized to a like a desktop computer. It can function through the software and start to do human tasks. And obviously, a lot of people are scared that AI is going to come to replace everything, and I think that's a ways away. And there's going to be some disruptions, but it's really impacting communications and marketing. And obviously, JJ, you're an expert in communications. You got a doctorate in it. And with how things are unfolding, if you could look through a lens and say, what does the future look like for sales and marketing in regards to small businesses? And of course, the customer experiences, where does love fit in with how there's a disruption in the marketplace, like arguably one of the largest disruptions since the Gutenberg press?
Yes, well done on that transition. I would agree with you that this is it is not only just a disruption, it's really like a revolution. It's an upending, I think, of in many ways how things have worked. And I think for a lot of people, that's very scary, especially in the marketing communication world. And I understand the fear that is there. And the truth is that I think if people who are in the marketing space, like moving away from small businesses for a second, but marketers and agencies themselves, if they're going to continue to position themselves just as a content factory, they're going to lose to AI. Because you actually have to show now the value add that you bring to the table that is beyond content creation. And pure content creation in its simplest form can be created by AI. So there has to be, if we're going to stay in this space of actually bringing value to the table as marketers and communicators, we have to bring the human element into it. And the way that I've been talking about how to bring the human element into it, I actually heard from the CEO of HubSpot. I was at the HubSpot Inbound conference. I spoke at that a few months ago. And she was on stage talking about AI because they're doing some amazing things with AI, but she really began to help me see the differentiation between, not specific differentiation, but how we can begin to think of ourselves in terms of working with AI. So I would argue AI creates, and this is, I took this from her, but now it's become my argument as well. AI creates, people curate. The only way to actually get good output from AI is by curating the prompts, by understanding your brand and your message before it goes in, and then taking what has come out and then curating that process, picking and choosing. AI does not have a perspective.
Yeah.
The only perspective it has is the perspective you give it. So through prompts, through editing afterwards. So AI is great at shortening the amount of time we have for writing things, getting more content out there. But if people are not involved in that process and curating the content, it's not going to go well. And people actually can see it already in the market. And people, there's a little bit of backlash against AI right now from a consumer side. If we can see that this is AI generated, we actually are tuned off immediately. I believe a recent survey I read was 82% of customers would say that they prefer a human connection over AI.
Oh, who'd figure that, eh?
Even
surprise,
if it's,
surprise.
Yeah, because even that's it put up where it's like, well, what if computers can do it faster? What if they can get you your answer faster or get you connected faster? Nope, they want human. So the first element is that AI creates, humans have to curate. The second piece is that AI offers context. So it actually gives you like steps and order of everything, but humans offer connection.
Yeah.
We have to offer that connection, and people are looking for it. And in some ways, they're even looking for it more than they did even 4 years ago, because COVID disrupted our connection in many ways. So AI creates and give context, people curate and give connection. And then the last piece is AI handles simplicity, but people handle subtlety. And so that's where I think we have to learn to work with the machines, if you will. I think we will start viewing AI in the future as a thought partner, even almost as a coworker with us, almost like an agent on our behalf. But you're right. Like 10 years from now, who knows? Who knows what this is all going to look like? But it's not at a point where it can replace humans. And I don't think ultimately it ever will.
You're an entrepreneur and you're busy, but we know that every business owner needs a podcast without the hassle of learning about production. Well, we figured it out for you. Activate Your Podcast is a service that offers everything you need to make a podcast that creates meaningful relationships with your clients at scale. The experts at AYP will work directly with you to produce 5-pillar episodes from a 2-hour conversation that captures the trust and love you are bringing to your ideal client. And the assets are all yours to create your own amazing marketing campaign. For the benefits of a podcast without the hard work, head to activateyourpodcast.com and let's create something great together. Now, back to the episode.
How do you use AI at the moment in your personal professional life?
I use it with a lot of prompts. I use it to kind of get me going on some things, to give me ideas. Mm-hmm. So I like to get outlines from it. Give me 3 ideas about this. Give me 4 ideas about this. And then I take it and create from there. And then I also use it to edit. I say, make it sound better. Yeah. Oddly enough, you can go into like even Chat GPT right now, and you can say, can you edit this in our StoryBrand world? Can you edit this brand script, or can you edit this one-liner in the voice of Dr. JJ Peterson? You can actually use my input. AI has taken my writings and my podcasts and my videos and different things, because people have inputted that in there, and you can actually basically get a JJ bot.
How do you feel about that? Is that do you have any sense of your IP or your you being stolen in some way?
It's a little uncomfortable, to be very honest. However, the space that I'm in a little bit more is I'm actually not necessarily a content creator. I can write emails and do websites very quickly, but where my actual value comes in is that strategy side of things, and that human side where I'm like curating. So I actually do teach people after I'm gone. So after I'm gone, here's a tool you can do. You want to write a brand script? You want to write an email? Tell AI to give you feedback like it's me. So in my context, it doesn't actually really get in the way of what I'm doing, because I've really moved out of the content creation space and more directly into strategy, and more kind of if I go in and I'm working with a company, it's a little bit more as a fractional CMO than it is so I'm guiding the team, I'm guiding strategy, but I'm not actually creating content.
I think, platforms like ChatGPT and so forth, they're wonderful when you're coming up with an idea and it's rough. Like you plug in a sentence or a phrase and you don't like it. It's nowhere near the final, but you're just throwing it together and you're saying, give me 6 variations. And then out of the 6, you're like, I kind of like that. And I kind of like that. And then you're like you said, JJ, you curate it. So it's great at shortening things too, especially for people like me that are really wordy, and you have to get it down to 400 words, and you ended up writing like 675, and you're like, make this 400 words, right?
Absolutely. So even now, I think it shortens our time. It shortens it gives us extra room to be creative and things like that. But I would still, there's nothing ever at this point that ChatGPT or any of the others that has given me that I've just put out as is. The other part is, the reality is that, let's say, and this is where it gets really interesting, Peter, of where you're talking about my IP, is that if somebody has taken my book and they have actually put that in ChatGPT, or they've stripped it down and kind of put it in AI, and then are using that to make money, there's some court cases right now that are out there where that very soon could be an option for me to sue people if I wanted. Now, I'm not going to, but I say that because a lot of people, especially if you're in the creative space, if you're using AI to create a logo, that logo is not trademarkable because you didn't create it. You cannot copyright or trademark things that have been AI generated. Now, what percentage you have to change it, all of that is up in the air right now. But a lot of times people are like, if you're just going to take what AI is giving you and put it out there, you can't trademark that. You can't copyright that. And if you're doing it by using other people's voice and other people's resources without their permission and not paying them for it, they could ultimately come back and sue you later. So there's that element right now in it too, that I think if people are just relying on AI exclusively without bringing their own piece to it, there's some danger in that, even from a legal side and just an integrity side. If people find out that you're not creating it and you're using AI yourself and they're paying you, you're going to be in trouble. So I think we're still in the early phases of this, but like we talked about, revolution. But I am not an anti-AI. I'm not an anti-technology. I just think you'd still need that human side, and that's where the love aspect comes in.
Well, AI is a large language model, and a lot of people, like I've heard things that, and again, I'm taking from other people. It's not my ideas, but I'm kind of making them my own as well. And I've heard the saying is AI is actually mislabeled. It's actually not intelligent. It's a large language model. And so everything it's spitting out to you is based off of millions upon millions of bits of information that have been out there from companies, books, and websites and blogs, like all of that stuff, social media, everything's been conglomerated into that. So when you're asking it to do something, it's really pulling from things that have already been created. It's not really creating something new and original. It's regurgitating something in a format that you've asked it for. So it's interesting. It's not really intelligent.
Yeah, they're big probability calculators, really. It's just with all the token base. It's like, what's the probability that this next word is the best next word for what's required? I mean, the science and the computational power and the mass that goes into it is phenomenal, but ultimately it's just based on probability.
Yeah. JJ, you brought up something that I thought was really interesting. I joke with my team. I'm like, this is my fourth and final pivot in business, because I've gone through different iterations of with marketing to adjust to make sure that you're relevant and so forth in business. And my belief is that because of COVID, it started at COVID, where people were distanced and things were locked down and so forth, where people started to crave that human connection. And then with the age of the internet, everything's easier. You shop online. You don't have to go to the store. Oh, you can work remote. You don't have to go into the office. And what's happened is people don't talk on the phone. They're not around in the office. They're not around people. People are getting more and more isolated. And I don't think that was the purpose of technology, but that's really become the outcome, in my opinion, of what technology is people are more and more and more spending time alone rather than getting that human connection. And I'm kind of betting, I don't want to say the house, but I'm betting my next pivot, hopefully my final pivot, is where people truly are going to crave that human connection, intangible, that is going to be recession proof. It's going to be AI proof, where AI can't create that human connection, but what we do through marketing and other things that are going to support and surround that will fulfill that human connection. Do you think that that's something that human connection is going to be a driving force going forward, or it's something that maybe not so much?
I actually believe it's a competitive advantage, to be very honest with you, because especially if you do have the ability even to use technology and AI and things like that, but also you treat people well. I mean, it's your competitive advantage, because the reality at this point is we have, like, let's say I want to hire somebody to just do my lawn. Okay. I now, with the way we live in this world, have access to every single person that does lawn care in Nashville, right? Like, the truth is I can pretty much find anybody. And so I can hire 30 people within 2 minutes of doing one search on the internet. The people who are going to stand out are the people who actually make me feel seen, understood, and valued. And I've been doing some work with Will Guidara, who wrote the book Unreasonable Hospitality.
Incredible read, by the way.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
anybody has not read that, I would argue that has building a story brand is the main book that changed my business life, and I would say the second one was Unreasonable Hospitality,
Yeah.
and genuinely changed the way. And I think if you have a clear message, that's a competitive advantage. But the second thing is when you learn how to treat people well, and when you learn how to see people and meet them where they are, doesn't mean that you're like customer is always right kind of thing, or bending over backwards for horrible people or anything. But when you actually treat people with kindness and intentionality, I believe in this next season, that will be the competitive advantage that helps you stand out, because everybody will now have great AI. How is that really going to differentiate you from other creators? You have to have to love and care for people well.
It's interesting. There was, I read the book, Will's book, right when it came out. I was in the Bahamas for a family vacation, and I was like, I'll just bring it for the overnight plane trip and so forth. I finished the book in like 5 days, and I was mad. And I don't consume books like that fast. I'm a slow reader.
Yeah.
And I was mad that I didn't have a backup book, because I figured this thing was going to take me 30 days, and it was so incredible.
Yeah.
There was one point in time where he talks about in the book, and I don't want to take away from too much of our podcast time, but excuse me, where he talks about that his team, front of house team, when you would book a reservation, would go online and look at your name and find a photo of you through LinkedIn or social media. And the doorman or the doorwoman, as you walk from the street for they open the door to you, go up in the elevator to the restaurant, would say, "Oh, welcome, Peter. This is your first time. You're going to have a great meal." And you're like, how in the world does this person know that? And it was a very interesting thing, because my wife and I did a little staycation in Southern California, and we decided to splurge, and we were staying at the Ritz-Carlton in Beverly Hills. We had stayed there before. We pulled up at check-in, get out, and the door guy says, "Mr. Bussius, it's great to see you. Welcome back." And I remember I didn't even catch it. He said, did he say my name? Did he say my name? But he said, "Welcome back." And that's what blew me away. I'm like, hold on. He did say my name. Welcome back. And I was wondering, how in the world did they know that? And then I read the book, Unreasonable Hospitality, and I'm like, it's those little details. I'm talking about it right now, but it's those little details that make you, wow, you want to do business with those kind of people, because those are the experiences that are memorable.
Well, and it's true for your customers, and I would argue it's also true for your staff. When your staff it's what we were talking about earlier. When your staff actually gets to create a special moment for your customers, they love it. They go crazy for it. And so, back to kind of your original question is, where does the human element fit in all of this? I genuinely believe it will be the differentiator. So the idea of loving, serving, seeing, valuing, and knowing people, it is what is going to be the differentiator moving forward.
Yeah. I'm gonna shift back to something, because you said something kind of casually and then just went on, and you were like, yeah, I was you had sold a script,
A reality show. Yeah. A reality show. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, and also I know that you were in the entertainment business outside of just that too. So selling a script, I mean, can you talk about that for a moment? Because I have people in Los Angeles that are in the business. That is no small feat. That is a major accomplishment.
Yeah, well, because it was, we sold a kind of a pilot and concept. So I didn't write a script, but I did script out, what a season would look like. But the show was called Bad A Brothers. And the premise was that my brothers and I are so not bad A that we can't even say the word. And so we can't say badass. And so the way
Okay.
we would become more bad A is we would find those old laws that are still on the books, like you can't cross a Minnesota border with a duck on your head. And we would go to that area of the country and we would research the history behind those laws. And then we would break those laws so we could be more bad A. And so that was, we kind of had filmed a sizzle reel pilot and then created um, created the series, kind of sketched out the whole first season and yeah, and then met with producers and kind of met with a couple different production companies and then went to different networks and it never actually got to air and it never had its final deal. There was a very large, a network that everybody knows who we decided to go with. And we'd been offered, like people had talked to us from a bunch of different networks. And
hey there, entrepreneurs and business owners. Are you feeling stuck with marketing strategies that just aren't delivering? Struggling to attract the right customers or boost your sales? Imagine turning those challenges into triumphs with a proven roadmap tailored just for you. Introducing Marketing Built by Love, the game-changing book by award-winning expert Daniel Bussius. Marketing Built by Love is designed to tackle your biggest business pains head-on, whether you're battling low visibility, weak customer loyalty, or stagnant growth. This book provides actionable solutions that drive real results. Here's how it can transform your business. Boost your revenue. Implement strategies that convert leads into loyal customers. Strengthen customer relationships. Create meaningful connections that keep your clients coming back. Streamline your marketing efforts. Save time and money with effective, easy-to-follow systems. Don't let marketing woes hold you back any longer. Take control and watch your business thrive. Grab your copy of Marketing Built by Love today in stores at Barnes & Noble, or order online at Amazon or wherever you buy quality books. Transform your marketing. Solve your business problems. Achieve the success you deserve with Marketing Built by Love. Available now.
Like, I think it was like TNT or TBS, whoever had Practical Jokers at the time, like they were like, okay, well, we'll put you behind Practical Jokers. So Practical Jokers will be your intro. And like we were at that level of discussion with different networks. Well, we went with this one network that was offering us the best deal. And we went through the whole process and then their lawyers killed it because they were like, we don't want to break a bunch of laws. And we're like, it's like $5 fines. Like these are not like huge things. And people are probably not going to even, get us for putting a duck on our head in Minnesota. And so then we're like, well, that one fell through. We'll go back to all the other networks, and all the other networks passed because the other one had. And so, and by that time I had already been like, I was traveling back and forth to Nashville to do stuff with StoryBrand. And I was kind of like, I'm just going to go with StoryBrand. I really like it. And so the production company had the rights to it for a few years. I have the rights back to it if I ever wanted to go do it again. But so I own the rights to that now.
You got to do it. Like, by the way, that's amazing. I think times have changed. Yeah. So
it reminds me of there's a law in the statute books in England around eating mince pies. It's either illegal to eat mince pies on Christmas Day, or you can only eat mince pies on Christmas Day, or something like that. Some like bizarre rules. That's the kind of thing you're talking about. That's really funny.
Really interesting and weird laws. Like you can't have an ice cream cone in your pocket in Atlanta, in your back pocket. And what we learned from that is that there was a law on the books at the time that was like, if a horse, you can't lead a horse to your land, but if a horse ends up on your land, then it's yours. So what people would do is they would walk by horses with ice cream cones in their back pockets, and then horses would follow them onto their property. And so but they've never taken it off the books. And so that's just kind of, some of those things were really interesting to me of how they came about and why they're still on the books. So we were going to break those laws so we could be more bad A.
You have to share the sizzle. I want to see the sizzle.
I'm sure I have it somewhere. I mean, now that was 10 years ago, at least. So
that's not that long ago.
Yeah. Well, it was like almost pre-YouTube.
Weren't you like a professional dancer also?
No, but I was in a Missy Elliott music video. So I was in the video ching-a-ling. You can see me for about 5 seconds in there, but no. So I guess you could qualify that as a professional dancer because yes, I danced professionally in a video. So, but yeah, I did a lot of mostly for that stuff because it was while I was doing comedy and kind of touring around, and I was based out of Laguna Beach. And so kind of when I wasn't touring, I'd be like, well, maybe I'll just go audition for this and be on this. So I got to be on a lot of different shows for fun. I was on The Office and West Wing and Ghost Whisperer and My Name is Earl and Gilmore Girls, and kind of that was my era of doing all of the things.
Is there a future for JJ to go back and to start tapping into that creative outlet again, or?
I don't think in front of the camera so much, but I do have a couple scripts that I've been kind of dabbling with over the years. And one of my goals this next year is to finish one. So
amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to that.
If you feel led to write in a part for a tall, bald, bearded Englishman, don't let me stop you. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
We might have an idea right now, so we'll see where that goes. But you would die early, just so you know.
But you're gonna have flashbacks, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a reoccurring role, is what it is, basically.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You're the ghost.
Yeah.
So you were a dean of a college.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said you brought in Donald Miller, and this was and you said this is pre-StoryBrand. So is this before the book?
Yes. Yeah.
How in the world did you? I mean, because I know he's an accomplished author, and he was an accomplished author before even StoryBrand, where people, I know his fans know that, like Blue Like Jazz and other things. But what was the connection? How do you come across that and then reach out to say, come out here?
We had a lot of mutual friends and had never met. So it's kind of one of those things where I had been doing some writing, and even like one of his mentors was one of my mentors, kind of thing. And it was always just like, you guys have to meet. And we never had met. And I was just a fan from afar. I had read his books and loved his books, and they had really shaped me. And I had heard what he was doing was going around. So he had written the book, what is it, 1,000,000 Miles in 1,000 Years. And he had also just gone through the process of making Blue Like Jazz into a movie. And I heard what he was doing kind of after that was going around and really teaching people how to be the hero of their own story, how to live a life with purpose. And it actually involves a lot of the same principles that we use in StoryBrand now. Because both are based in story frameworks. So they're based in movie writing and story and everything. So one is how you live out your own hero's journey and overcoming hardship and finding a mentor and creating a plan and visualizing success, all of these things. So I just wanted him to come in and talk to my students about how to genuinely find purpose and meaning in life by becoming the hero of their own story.
It's amazing. And so you've had the opportunity. I'm sorry.
And then we literally just, because it was one of those things where I'm like, I'm never going to see this guy again. He lives in Nashville. I live in Southern California. I'm never going to see him. So I actually didn't have any of the like fanboy kind of like weirdness. I just was like talking to him, and we just kind of became friends. And he knew I was leaving the school to do this television thing, and that I'd done writing and being a professor. And so he's like, come brand yourself. I'm doing this. I'm trying this new thing called StoryBrand. And, and that's kind of how it started. So,
and so you moved to Nashville. I mean, and I came across StoryBrand at a conference where I had met Matt Harris, who was in charge of, sales. And he was like, yeah, there's this thing, StoryBrand. I was like, yeah, well, what is it? And we kind of hit it off. We had a couple drinks, and he was like, no, you got to check out. It's going to change your life. And then I went through it. I saw Donald's presentation, and I was like, damn it. I've been talking about this hero journey thing in such a clunky way. And it was the same thing. It's like, wow, it's just so brilliantly simple that, all right, okay, I'm signing up. I don't know what this thing is. I'm signing up for it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And obviously that's how I came across, like, having the opportunity to meet you. And I had the pleasure and the blessing to work directly with Donald in Nashville. And And you guys, I think right around 2019 or something, you guys were maybe in the ballpark of 2 million revenue or something like that. I might be off on that. Well, from last I heard, and maybe the data's changed, but the company's, 20 plus $1 million annual gross revenue. So you got in kind of at, I mean, not the ground floor, because it would have been like, $0, but you got in at the point. We just had a podcast with another a gentleman, a CPA, talking about the darkest time of a company is when you're in that, like, 2 to 5 million. He said 3 million is really the marker of, like, you don't have enough firepower to hire to fix all the problems. You haven't figured out all the systems and processes. And here you uprooted yourself from Southern California, go into a new city, and now you're working at this, really a startup. What was that like?
Great question.
It was really fun, to be very honest. Because I had just come from. I mean, I had a little bit of cash kind of left from leaving the school and the show and all that stuff, so I wasn't in like a place where I was desperate financially, and also this was a fun adventure. I genuinely thought when I started I'd be out here for a year and kind of help things launch and leave, and that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And he hates when I say this. I don't know why, but he hates when I say this. But what I moved out here for, my salary was $24,000. So I moved to Nashville, and it was like, we can pay you enough to pay your rent, and then whatever you help us build, we'll give you a percentage of, which is not true anymore. But at the time, it was like whatever product I created, because we were selling like 1 or 2 products at a time. Like our only product at that time was Dawn, like Dawn going and speaking or doing workshops for private companies. And then my job was really to take his knowledge and his brain and make it so that it was much more accessible to people through live workshops and then facilitators so I started training a team of people who would then go in and do private workshops. So my job was to kind of take his brain and make it more formalized and more accessible versus just him going in and saying, just say this, just do this. Well, it's like, well, let's teach people how to think like you. And that's kind of what I did. So yeah, when I first came out, so actually when I very first started, we ended the company that was really what he was doing of helping people live their own hero's journey. And that was called Storyline. And it was a conference company. And at the time, that conference company was making $250,000 a year.
Wow.
Now that was more than what we were doing in StoryBrand, because StoryBrand didn't really exist. And there was basically 5 of us that all came on staff and built this thing together.
Amazing.
So when I came on, I don't know how much money we actually had in StoryBrand, but out of Storyline, it was less than 250,000. So,
wow.
And then we
built
it
was
it
a
up.
startup. I mean, truly a startup.
Yeah. And we shut down we all shut down the conference company and said, we're going full time with StoryBrand.
Wow.
And so, and that was 10 years ago. And so then, yeah, the book didn't come out until 2017, I don't think. So we really started in 2014, and maybe there was 1 or 2 workshops in 2013, but 2014, and then the book came out in 2017.
And is StoryBrand still 100% your focus? Are you involved in anything else? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And we've kind of created some other companies out of StoryBrand, one called Business Made Simple, which kind of uses frameworks to help small businesses grow. And then now we've created another company called Coach Builder, which really helps coaches build their business, no matter what kind of coaching you're in. But it's all really the strong foundational piece is really the StoryBrand messaging side of it.
Yeah. You've had the opportunity, you mentioned it before, that you've worked with Fortune 100 brands. You've worked with, directly probably hundreds, if not thousands of companies. And then through your live streams, probably reached close to 1 million people. Is there a synergy, or is there a common thread between the success you see with very large companies versus small? And then conversely, I'll ask you the opposite next.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about it is that, hold on just a second. So sorry. I'll get Jaden. Okay. Sorry, we have kid pickup. We had to organize here just real quick. Hopefully I can edit it out.
Always.
So the way that, what I've seen, it's really interesting. So I've worked with companies like Tempur Sealy, which is the largest mattress company in the world, or Microsoft. And what's interesting is when you're working with smaller companies, well, I'll just answer your question pretty plainly. It works the same for everybody in this way of you use the StoryBrand framework to clarify your message. So the StoryBrand framework is really based in story principles and gives you kind of like a funnel to take all the language and everything you know about your company and boil it down to 7 different talking points. And when you boil it down to those 7 different talking points, it really forces you to have a clear and compelling story that positions your customer as the hero and you as the guide. And so that's the principle of the StoryBrand framework. It just helps you clarify your message and get a clear, compelling message. Now, in a small company, you may do one brand script. You may do one of those, and that's your whole company brand script. And so if you're a marketing agency, you have one story for the most part. Where larger companies, so like if I go in and I'm working with Microsoft, I'm creating a story for Microsoft Edge of why Microsoft Edge is better than Google Chrome. So I'm not doing Microsoft because Microsoft story is different than Microsoft Edge story. And it's different than business services and schools. And you have so many different stories. So you have lots of different stories to tell. But you still use the same principles at every level. So what I've seen, and same thing like with Tempur Sealy, when we're working with Tempur Sealy, we're working with how to talk directly to mattress stores, how to sell online, how to create collateral for the store owners to sell to their customers, and then for every individual product. So the bigger the company, the more time consuming it is because you do have to create more stories, but you're already doing that with marketing. The smaller the company, the less stories you're creating. But for all of them, my dissertation was really a study of narrative theory. So I wanted to really answer 2 questions. Does narrative marketing work? And the quick research came back, yes, it does. The quick answer is yes, narrative marketing is the most effective form of marketing you can use, storytelling. Then I wanted to know, who does it work for? And I looked at every variable that I could think of, like small business, large business, B2B, B2C, service-based, product-based, big, little, huge. And I mean, 1 employee to 5,000 employees and everything in between. And the research came back that it actually worked for everybody. Doesn't matter what industry or size you are, it works. The only variable that showed that there was any kind of difference was implementation. Whether you actually put it in a different areas of your business. So for a small business, if you started using it in your elevator pitch, you saw increased engagement and more money and more customers. If then you put it on your website, you saw an even greater success. If then you put it in emails, greater success. If you put it in lead generators, social media, every level that you began using narrative marketing, you saw an increased level of success. So in some ways, it works faster for small businesses because you're really only putting it in 5 or 6 areas. When you're working with big businesses, you're putting it in thousands of areas. So you put it in one little area and it goes, well, it didn't make that big of a difference. It did in that little area, but you have to actually implement across the board.
Is there a bag of tricks, or is there something that the listeners listening to now that's obviously a small business owner that's scaling, right, that they could do today or this weekend or whenever they're listening to the podcast to make an immediate impact into their business, whether it's attracting more customers or closing those customers or whatever?
Yeah, there's 2 things that if I was to have 5 minutes with everybody, which essentially is what this is in this moment, there's really 2 things I would say. The first thing is identify the problem that your customer is experiencing that your product or service solves. Why that's important from a narrative perspective is stories good movies, good stories, the way that they hook audiences is when the hero encounters a problem. So in the first 5 to 7 minutes of a movie, sometimes 9 to 12, the hero is just happy-go-lucky, things are good. Well, if that remained through the whole movie, we would be bored. We'd be bored to death. If they literally just walked around window shopping for 3 hours, we're not watching that movie. But if they're walking around window shopping and all of a sudden somebody puts a bomb that is tied to their arm, somehow they got caught up in some crazy scheme, and now the rest of the movie is they have to figure out how to get this bomb off their arm. Now we're hooked. The problem really creates attention and makes the story interesting. That is what we pay attention to as an audience, is when our brain goes, ooh, there's a problem. Is it going to get solved? So in your marketing, the more you can talk about the problems that your customers are experiencing, the more then they will pay attention to your marketing and messaging. So that's the first thing. Is I would say, you're going to do this right now. Write down the problems your customers are experiencing that your product or service solves.
Can I suggest a possible caveat to that?
Yep.
Is that often as business owners, we are so close to what we have and what we sell that we're not 100% in tune with what the saying is that what you sell isn't necessarily what your customers buy. Okay, here's my question. How can, as a business owner, how can you make sure that you really know what problems your customers have?
Yeah. Ask them. I always say that is like, put surveys, get testimony, go over your testimonies and ask them, why did you reach out to us? What have you tried before that didn't work? Things like that will get you into the problem. Yeah. So if you figure that out and write that down, and then in its most simple form, a short story is literally saying, you're experiencing this problem, here's our solution. And that's it. Only talk about your product or service as a solution to their problem. Don't come in and start talking about your product or service as a great thing, all the features that it has, even all the benefits. They're not going to pay attention to that unless they understand how it helps them solve a problem. So problem solution, that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is the header on your website. The header on your website needs to be so clear that if somebody looked at it in 3 seconds, they could answer 3 questions. What do you do? How does it make my life better? And how do I get it? That is how clear, because the average person spends between 3 and 5 seconds on a website, depending on which research you read. So you really have 3 seconds to hook them and make them see that this is something they want, need, this is the story they want to be a part of. So don't be vague about what you're offering. If you offer marketing services that help them grow their business, say marketing services that help you grow your business. Don't say, we help you climb the highest mountains. Nope, that's vague. We need to be so clear that they could look at it in 3 seconds and answer, what do you do? Make sure how do I get it? You need to have clear calls to action on your website. Buy now, schedule a call, something like that on the header of your website. A recent article by Forbes said that 70% of small businesses in America do not have a strong call to action on their website. 70%. So if you have a button that somebody can click that either schedules a call or buys now, you're in the top 30% of businesses in America. So just know that. And then how does it make my life better? You need to show a little bit of success that your customer will experience, or benefit that your customer will experience from buying your product or service. So if you have those 3 pieces in the header of your website, you have a clear and compelling website that will engage more customers.
Amazing. At the risk of putting my head on the chopping block, can I tell you what the header is on our website?
Yeah.
And you tell me how much work I need to do on it.
Yeah.
So our header says, what if marketing your business was as easy as talking to an old friend?
Okay. What else do you have on there?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It's just like a few little things about
Peter's bald face.
Sorry?
Peter's bald head.
That's further down the page. Yeah, just a couple of bullet points about how our solution makes their life easy, and then book a call.
So I really like the header that you have there. What if it could be as easy as talking to somebody? I like that, but that doesn't tell me what actually services you offer.
Mm.
So if I'm like looking at that right away, I go, oh, you are a speech coach. Like if I'm just going from the most dumb version, if I look at it, I go, oh, they're going to teach me to talk. And so you're basically like a speech coach, or you give scripts to me to be able to say. My assumption is, do you do more than that?
We actually help business owners get started with a podcast.
Oh, then you want to say that. So that's like, then that's what you like. And that doesn't have to be what you have is great, is a great tagline. It's great message. It's great branding, messaging. So branding is about how you make people feel. Like Nike's Just Do It is incredible branding. They don't really need to do messaging. They don't need to explain what they do because everybody knows who Nike is. Coca-Cola, great branding. They don't need great messaging. The rest of us, we need to combine those two together. So we have really good branding there of like, what if it was just as easy as talking to a friend? Fantastic. Then right underneath that in a subheader, you need to say what you actually do. Right. Because I don't know if you're a marketing agency. Do you create websites? Do you give me speeches? Do you just say, I create, help you create podcasts? Now, if you do other things, just do them as bullet points. Create a podcast, launch a business, something like that. But say what you actually do.
Great advice. Thank you, JJ.
Uh-huh.
Okay, can you send the invoice to my accountant? I don't want to see it.
Yeah, right away.
You do not want to see that invoice. So what's the future for JJ Peterson? I mean, you're a new father. Congratulations, by the way.
Not with a baby, but with a 8-year-old and a 16-year-old. But so yes,
I made that assumption when I heard someone's got to pick up the kids from school. I was like, okay, yeah.
So they're a little older.
Yeah, thank you. There are many children that need loving families and homes, and so that's. You're a blessing to those children in the world. So thank you. Cause that's huge. Yeah. So what's that like? I mean, you not too long ago, you got married. Now you have a family. Obviously you have an incredibly successful career with a company that continues to skyrocket in growth. So what's the future for JJ Peterson? I mean, it kind of honestly feels like you could go anywhere and do anything, right?
Well, I think I'm going to be with StoryBrand for quite a while, but one of the things that I'm starting to do is some outside consulting myself. So I still, do all the training and teaching and things and writing with StoryBrand, but I'm doing some of private. By the time this podcast comes out in particular, I will be doing some more private consulting where I come in and work with companies one-on-one. And then I also help people kind of in the like education space to some degree. Like, so Peter, let's say you wanted to formalize your process of teaching people how to start a podcast and you wanted to create an online course for that. I come in and help people kind of organize the communication and thinking around that to make it be a really clear course that you could put online. So those are kind of some of the private side, but really like I've been doing what I've been doing for 10 years and I don't see it quitting anytime soon but I think I'm going to be expanding to some more personal things. I also teach at Vanderbilt in the master's marketing program there. I'm also got a book. I'm working on a book right now that's actually more of a memoir, and then also my screenplay. So I'm starting to diversify a little bit, but really my main stuff is still going to be marketing, consulting, and branding. So.
Right.
I can speak from personal experience after writing my book and getting it out there in the world, and then saying, okay, well, we need to create a course. Like we need to, because it was kind of like Donald Miller 10 years ago, where I'm still the primary person teaching, right? And so it's a great product. It changes the world, but trying to go through that process of we need to systematize this. This needs to be a course. This needs to be something that can remove me from it, at least part of it. That is a nearly impossible task in order to create something that's truly powerful And so that's amazing. I may need to hire you for that. We'll have to talk
Yeah.
offline on
Yeah.
the podcast.
We'll chat, because
Yeah.
that's a fun thing that I've done for a couple different people. So
I can speak to that. So how can people, if they're listening to this, I mean, obviously, if they want to go to StoryBrand, I think that's well known, right? But if they want to tap into the genius of JJ Peterson through your fractional CMO, your consulting, helping people lay out courses or any of those other things, where would they go to do that to get in contact with you?
the easiest place, honestly, is just Instagram. That's the social media platform that you can hit me up on LinkedIn and stuff like that. But on Instagram, it's just Dr. JJ Peterson, and that's where I end up interacting with a lot of people on. And then if you're interested in kind of the StoryBrand side of things, also you can go to storybrand.com. And if you're looking for a workshop or something like that in that space.
And just in case someone's listening to this and they're jogging or driving to work or whatever, for your Instagram handle, is that spelled out doctor or is it abbreviated DR?
DR. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
yep.
DR Peterson?
JJ Peterson.
DR JJ Peterson. Got it.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna follow you today.
Awesome. JJ, it's been a
yeah.
I was going to say, JJ, it's been an absolute joy and a privilege to spend this time with you. It's been fascinating. Thanks so much.
Yeah, your time is precious. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Built by Love podcast. If you found the conversation inspiring or helpful in any way, then head to builtbylove.com/podcast and make sure you're subscribed to our email list. Please also take a few minutes to leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, and share this episode with a friend that you think it might help. Each review helps us to spread the message of love to more people. See you next time on the Built by Love podcast.